Beneath the oil tanks at the Anadarko petroleum site, investigators made a discovery so horrific that seasoned detectives still cannot speak about it without pausing. The Chris Watts case isn't just about what he did. It's about how a picture-perfect Colorado neighborhood became the setting for one of America's most chilling true crime stories, and why no community is immune. Frederick, Colorado, August 2018. The Watts family home sits empty in the Windham Hill subdivision, a testament to the evil that can hide behind suburban normality. Shanann Watts, 34 years old and 15 weeks pregnant, along with her daughters Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, disappeared without a trace. Their story begins like countless others, with Ring doorbell footage showing Shanann returning home from a business trip at 1:48 a.m. It would be the last time she was seen alive. What followed was a performance so calculated, so devoid of genuine emotion, that it would later become textbook evidence of psychological manipulation. Chris Watts, standing before television cameras, pleaded for his family's safe return, while investigators were already uncovering the first inconsistencies in his story. Police arrived at the Watts residence within hours of Shannon's friend, Nicole Atkinson, reporting her missing. Chris Watts allowed them to search the home, a decision investigators would later call his first critical mistake. Inside the house, they found Shannon's phone wedged between couch cushions. Her purse sat untouched. Her medication remained. Her car was in the garage. Nothing suggested she had planned to leave, yet everything was eerily in place. The case accelerated when security footage from a neighbor's camera captured Chris loading something heavy into his work truck at 5:27 a.m., hours before he claimed to have last seen his wife. FBI analysis would later note his unusually calm demeanor during police interviews, his failure to ask about search progress, and his preoccupation with his phone. Just 48 hours into the investigation, police brought Chris in for a polygraph test. After failing spectacularly, scoring -18, when anything below -4 indicates deception, Chris requested to speak with his father. What followed was a partial confession that would only scratch the surface of the horror that occurred. After his confession, Chris Watts led investigators to the Anadarko petroleum site, where he worked as an operator. The location, a desolate oil field 40 minutes from their home, would reveal the full extent of his crimes. Shannon's body was found in a shallow grave, hastily covered with dirt. But the most disturbing discovery awaited at the oil batteries. There, investigators found what Chris had done to his daughters. Bella and Celeste had been forced through 8-inch hatches at the top of the crude oil tanks, their bodies submerged in oil. Autopsy reports would later confirm the unthinkable. Bella, the older daughter, had fought for her life. Bite marks on her tongue and bruises on her face showed that she had struggled against her father in her final moments. Celeste's body revealed similar signs of trauma. Shanann had been strangled. Her unborn son, who they had planned to name Nico, never had a chance. The crime scene technicians, wearing hazmat suits, had to drain the 400-barrel tanks to recover the children's bodies. Even veteran investigators stepped away, overcome by what they witnessed. One detective later testified that the images from that day would haunt them forever. What drives a man to annihilate his entire family? The answer emerged slowly as investigators pieced together the final weeks of the Watts family. Text messages recovered from Chris and Shannon's phones painted a picture of a marriage in rapid decline. While Shanann was away on a business trip to Arizona, Chris had been carrying on an affair with a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger. Their relationship had intensified over the summer of 2018, with Chris telling Kessinger he was in the final stages of divorce. Financial records revealed the Watts were drowning in debt, facing a second bankruptcy despite their seemingly comfortable lifestyle. The $400,000 house, the new Lexus, the regular vacations, all financed on credit cards and loans they couldn't afford. But perhaps most chilling were Chris's Google searches in the weeks before the murders. When will I find love again? How to tell if you're in love? And finally, how to clean up crime scene. Instead of divorce, which would have meant child support for 3 children and potential alimony, Chris Watts chose what he saw as an easier solution. In his mind, his family had become obstacles to his new life, disposable barriers to the future he envisioned with his mistress. In November 2018, just months after the murders, Chris Watts stood before a packed courthouse. To avoid the death penalty, he accepted a plea deal, guilty on all 9 counts, including 3 counts of first-degree murder and unlawful termination of pregnancy. The courtroom fell silent as Shanann's father, Frank Ruzick, addressed his former son-in-law. "You monster. You carried them out like trash. You monster. You heartless monster." Other family members delivered emotional impact statements describing the depths of their grief and betrayal. Judge Marcelo Kopkow didn't hold back, calling it the most inhumane and vicious crime I have handled. He sentenced Watts to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 3 consecutive life terms for the murders, plus additional years for other charges. But the case didn't end with the sentencing. In February 2019, from prison, Chris Watts provided a new confession that contradicted his initial story. He admitted to killing Shanann in their bedroom, then driving his daughters, still alive, to the oil site where he smothered them one by one before disposing of their bodies. Today, Chris Watts sits in a maximum security prison in Wisconsin, where he reportedly keeps photos of his victims in his cell and claims to have found religion. Meanwhile, the Watts family home in Colorado stood empty for years, a silent monument to the tragedy, before finally selling at a significantly reduced price. The Chris Watts case has become more than a true crime footnote. It's now studied by law enforcement, psychologists, and domestic violence experts across the country. Body language analysis dissect his interview footage to identify the subtle tells of deception. Criminal psychologists examine his behavior as a textbook example of family annihilation. What makes this case particularly disturbing is how ordinary Chris Watts appeared. Neighbors described him as quiet but friendly. Colleagues thought of him as reliable. Social media posts showed a smiling family man. There were no previous police reports of domestic violence, no criminal history, and no documented mental health issues. Yet, beneath this facade, the warning signs existed. Shannon's text to friends revealed increasing isolation and control. Financial records showed mounting pressure, and perhaps most telling, Chris's sudden shift in behavior, weight loss, new interest, increased secrecy with his phone. Classic indicators of an affair that would become the catalyst for tragedy. The Watts family murders serve as a stark reminder that sometimes the monster isn't hiding under the bed, but lying in it. In neighborhoods across America, similar tensions build behind closed doors. The question isn't just how Chris Watts could do something so unthinkable, but whether we would recognize the warning signs if they were happening next door. As one detective who worked the case said, evil doesn't always look like what we expect it to. Sometimes it looks like the house down the street.